Okay, so I have no idea when this is going to go in the actual video, but we have a package here. I just want to go ahead and open up. As you can see, it is fairly massive, sitting in the back of the GT Sport here, but we're going to go ahead, open it up, show you guys what it is. So I'm over here looking at this muffler like, man, this thing is extremely clean. Like, I knew the car had, you know, low miles, but man, like, look at this tag. It shows 6,000 miles on this muffler, and even came with the original gasket. Like, look at how clean this is. You cannot get a cleaner looking used muffler than this one. I mean, that is just nuts. And something else I noticed, if I can get the tape measure, is that the center piping here does not appear to be 3-inch piping. I don't know about you guys, but that is about level. I mean, that, if I had to call 2.5, that looks about 2.5, maybe 2 3/4. Alright, so unfortunately I have a little bit of a damage report to do. As far as this tip over here, I don't see any damage other than some scratching along the top, which you really won't see more than probably that much of the tip at the most anyways. But on this side, I do have a small dent on, that would be the passenger side tip. So I'm hoping that is kind of far enough down the side that you won't really notice it, but we will have to wait and see. That is a huge bummer because it's not a small dent. Okay, so I just got the valve open, and I kind of did it a little risky way by using a little Dremel bit on the Dremel tool, but it worked. So I followed the exact same path as Ray did. Thanks for sending me the pictures, Ray. It definitely helps out. But anyway, I followed the exact same path he did. Regardless, I got it open. You can tell I definitely hit the side of the motor there. Brushed it a little bit with the bits, but everything looks to be okay so far. The part Ray was talking to me about, that's a little risky here, is you have to really be careful and only cut about halfway into that little you have to just be careful of that little diode there, because yeah, you can see it sticks up pretty close to the edge where I was cutting, and you have to be careful because this gear and the spiral piece that spins the gear rubs up against that plastic while turning, and it must use it for some sort of support to keep the tension on the gear in order to turn it and everything like that. And you can see there's some lubrication they put in there. Not as much as I would have thought, but anyways, it uses little plastic edge to hold that tension on there, so you have to be careful not to break that when you're going and opening the valve. But anyways, it is open. That's all there is to it. If you guys want to know the path that we use for cutting it, here we go. So it's on the top edge with the spiral facing out. It's on the top edge going around the motor casing. It follows that line all the way down to that corner. And then once you get to this corner, it's a little messy over here because, as I said, I'm using a thick Dremel bit. You go kind of diagonally down to, any way really to get around this mounting point right here will do the trick on this side. But then again, I transitioned onto the factory seam after this mounting point. Went along that factory seam. Again, any way to get around this will do the trick. And then over towards the plug, I went diagonally on top of it and then back up to that top part around the motor. Okay, so I got my little ghetto rig tester hooked up here. I got my speed controller here. It's a PWM motor controller. LED gets brighter as the speed increases, but anyways, if you turn it about, I don't even know if it's 25%, just enough to get the LED lit up there. As you can see, turns both directions, no problem. This is not a momentary switch. This is like a different type of switch, so I'll have to switch this to a momentary switch. Okay, so this is day 2 of me trying to wire the valve correctly so I can control it via a momentary switch and a speed controller I bought off eBay. I have everything hooked up here. As you can see, the speed controller is powered via the power supply, and then I have 2 of the 3 factory wires hooked up to the outputs because that's all you need, one for each side of the motor. And to test it out here, as you can see, everything works forward and backward just fine. I'll go ahead and open the valve up so you can see how I went ahead and wired it. Let's try not to break anything here. So here's the factory board. But what I need to do basically to eliminate the circuit board here is to cut the terminals that are soldered onto the board to the factory wiring harness right there. So as you can see, I went ahead and sliced through 2 of the 3 terminals there, and then I wired jumpers onto each one of the motor terminals on the other side of the circuit board here. So you can see one of the wires goes over to this far one and is run underneath there. You will be able to get away with one wire there. And then the other one is on the back side of this one right here, and it goes over to the middle wiring harness lead. But the only thing you need to keep an eye on if you're doing this project yourself is the fact that the gear here does take up quite a bit of room right here. So you need to really keep all your wiring and everything flush with this terminal right here, and everything really just needs to be parallel to that so you don't have any interference with rubbing or anything from this gear turning. But yeah, I think that's how I'm going to keep it for now because it seems to work right. It's not pretty because I'm not gonna lie, I soldered 2 or 3 wires on each terminal multiple times trying different things, and finally I was like, you know what, you just need to eliminate the circuit board altogether, cut those leads off. So basically you're just running the harness, the factory harness, straight to the 2 motor terminals, and that's the way you're going to want to do it. Now if you guys don't have the factory wiring or do not want to use the factory wiring, then it's very simple. You just want to run 1 wire from each of these terminals out the factory plug location, and then solder them or connect them to your controller or whatever you're going to be using to control the motor. So right now I'm working on wiring the new momentary switch together. As you can see, this is what I got, and a momentary switch is when you press it, it springs back to the center as the off position, and the switch that came on the PWM controller right here is just a switch that stays on whatever direction you selected. So I'm going to be working on recreating this wiring on my new momentary switch. Okay, so I got everything temporarily hooked up here. Obviously the PWM is hooked to power and ground. I have the 2 output wires hooked to the valve motor, and then I have all these 4 temporarily hooked up via butt connectors to the original PWM connector, and of course my momentary switch here. So I'm going to go ahead and press the one direction, it spins, and when I go the other way. And then of course, to control the speed and the power, you can go ahead and crank this thing up a little bit faster. And of course it stops once the switch is back to the middle position, which is exactly what I want. This is essentially what is going to be going in the car as a finished product, but obviously I'm going to have to extend the wires a lot from the back hatch area, exhaust area, all the way to the fuse panel by the driver's feet. So I'm guessing it's going to be roughly 20 feet worth of wire, something like that, which I should have enough here for both the positive and negative. I'm going to tap into one of the fuse blocks. I'm thinking rear wiper fuse is a suggestion that was made by somebody I know. So I think I'm going to be tapping into the fuse for the rear wiper for power, and then obviously grounding it. I'll probably use the same ground bolt as the dash camera. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. And now I'm just waiting to get the exhaust actually physically fitted to the Elantra GT, and then we can go ahead and hook the valve up. Obviously we need to seal the valve still. I'm waiting to do that just until I can go ahead and mount it on the actual exhaust, because then that'll give it some sort of clamping force to help the silicone or whatever I end up using cure. So yeah, that's basically all there is to it, and we are now ready to mount it in the car. So I am very excited. It still might be a couple of weeks until I get the exhaust actually physically fit and custom welded and everything like that. So it is kind of a bummer that I'm going to have to wait a little longer until I can get the exhaust actually on the car. But for now, we have all the wiring and stuff set and ready to go. So, okay guys, I am back with another update on this project, and this might be the last update on this project for this part of the video series. I think I'm going to break this up into two parts, where part one is kind of like the pre-install in the car, and part two is going to be installing it on the car, running the wiring on the car and everything like that. So bear with me, just depends on how much video I have accrued over this project so far. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at this update on the video. So I don't know if you guys remember way back on the unboxing part of this video when I first got the Veloster N exhaust, I mentioned one of the tips was actually slightly dented in on the valve side of the exhaust, so that would be the left hand side of the exhaust. Well, it turns out I actually was able to find just that tip and the valve mechanism for sale off a parts car. So I kind of really got lucky there in the fact that that's the only part I really needed. So yes, here is the part I am talking about. This is just the right hand side of the exhaust, I guess, depending on which way you're looking at it, not left hand side. I don't know what I was thinking. This is the right hand side on the back of the car, and as you can see, it is cut off right here, which is right where the muffler would start, and it included the valve assembly, the electronic valve itself, and the tip, which is the part I really needed. As you can see, it is damaged, but all the damaged portions are behind a good inch or so on the exhaust tip itself, and you will not see that once it is on the car. So as you guys remember, the dent was right on the very front edge on my exhaust, so when you're looking at it, it was very odd looking on this side of the exhaust. But since I have the brand new used tip here, that is in very good shape on the part that you will see. I'm very happy about that. It was not a very cheap part. This is actually almost as much as the entire exhaust I paid for the first exhaust, but again, it came with an extra valve. Came with the valve assembly, which I'm sure is worth money on its own. And this small piece of pipe actually gives me kind of a good look at how the valve assembly works, and allows me to mount my already modified valve here on the actual exhaust without having the entire exhaust here, and allows me to go ahead and seal up that valve and everything like that. So let's go ahead and do that. That is what we're going to be doing in this part of the video. We are going to be mounting my modified valve on this portion of the exhaust, testing it out with power to it and actuating the valve, seeing how everything works. So let's go ahead and do that really quick, and I'll show you guys how the valve actually works. Alright, so the valve is actually seated close to where it would be. I don't think it's tightened down all the way, but it is definitely seated on there, and all the bolts and nuts are tight. So in theory, this is how the valve is going to look on my exhaust when I get it back. But as you can see, there is some gapping that will need to be sealed up with some silicone. It's not the best gappage, but again, it'll allow me to hold it down and the silicone to be set while it is mounted on the exhaust itself. So that is exactly what I wanted. And again, we can go ahead and test it here out really quick, hook it up to the power supply, and see how it actuates the valve. Okay, so just got everything hooked up to the power supply just like it would be in the car, and it works exactly like I thought it'd work. So I don't know if you guys can see inside the valve here. I might have to get a little bit of extra light. Alright, you should be able to see the valve in there now. Boom. Just like that. That is about the perfect speed actually too. So yeah, that's exactly what I wanted the end result to look like. And so we are pretty much ready to go after I get the valve sealed up. And I get the exhaust back from the shop, which I think I put a clip in here of me going to drop it off the other day. But yeah, we are pretty much it. I guess I do have to run over there and drop off this exhaust tip so they can go ahead and fit the good one on. But otherwise, I think that is going to wrap up this part one of this video series. Again, it's only going to be a two-part series. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. I'm hoping to get the exhaust back within a week or so. It's already been there a week today. Man, so we are on the home stretch of this exhaust project, and I couldn't be more excited, to be honest. So as you guys saw, Ray up in Canada has fit his Veloster N exhaust on his Elantra GT Sport. Sounds amazing, but again, he has some other mods like a mid pipe and down pipe and everything like that, whereas my car is going to be stock with the Veloster N muffler. So it'll be very interesting to see the sound differences. And of course, what's awesome about this project is we can go ahead and test stock exhaust versus my modified exhaust right next to each other at the exact same time. So yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up this video. Again, I'm super excited about it. Hopefully you guys are too. I don't know if I'm going to release this part one tomorrow or within the next coming days, or wait until I have everything done on the car, but I'll probably release it here in a couple of days so you guys can tune in on what is going on for the exhaust. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button. Stay tuned for part two, which should be hopefully coming very soon, pending the exhaust work gets done. But yeah, stay tuned for part two, and I will see you guys in that video.